Today, what I'm going to go over, just to give you a little bit of an overview as to what I'm talking about before I dive right in, is we're going to be looking at a couple of the product offerings from Foundry that are Colorway and Modo, and a look at how they can help improve your design workflow, improve visual communication and messaging of design intent and a lot of other things in a more robust and streamlined fashion. So I'm going to start by looking a little bit at Colorway, showing you some of the features and talking about some of the things that it can do to help you improve your workflows, help everybody stay connected in any type of work situation. And then also we'll build up a quick example just live so you can see how Colorway works, just starting right from scratch. There are a few nice things to see when you're actually building a project from scratch. And then also towards the end, I'm going to hop over into Moto, which is our full-featured 3D modeling and animation package, and show how it can work with Colorway and add some complementary things that that'll allow you to get even more out of your visualizations. All right, so we're going to start here in Colorway, and you should see, hopefully on your screen, my green and orange backpack. I'm in Oregon, so I got to give the local universities some branding colors here, just to keep those who are close to me happy. But Colorway is laid out in such a way and is designed in a way to be familiar for people who are comfortable with 2D design applications. A lot of times that would be like Adobe suite of applications. So if you've used Illustrator, if you've used Photoshop, if you've used InDesign, a lot of the things that are going on here should be fairly comfortable and fairly familiar. So Colorway is broken down layout-wise into a couple of, or really three, distinctive chunks. So there's information and tools on the left and on the right. So on the left, you have everything that exists in your scene, different versions and variations, a list of all your items and things that you can access and work on inside of your scenes. Jumping over to the right-hand side are all of your tools, where you get all of your interactivity and the things that you can work on in your scene. And then in the center of the screen is kind of the fun part, the visual part, where is your canvas. And we're starting off here. In this one, we've got just a single page on the canvas, but we can have multiple pages. You can lay out and design these any way that you'd like. If you have existing tech packs or something like that that you work with, you can have those here, and you can duplicate them inside of Colorway so that you can use kind of existing workflows that you have and be able to kind of pipe this into your existing workflow and pipeline without having a big major disruption, but allowing you to get more out of it. So a lot of times when we're working on designs and looking at new design possibilities and concepts, we see something that looks really similar to this. And so this is just a layout for a backpack. It has all the different parts and allows us to see the color choices that we've made. And I've got different variations that show the different color choices that we have in this current line. But sometimes that makes it difficult to really understand the designer's intent. Because as we look at this, maybe we have call outs that are going to show what parts are mesh, what parts are, have a foam padding, what parts are metal and plastic. But it gets a little bit more difficult to visualize that if you're not the designer who has the design really well ingrained in your own head. So where Colorway really helps with that is it allows you to have all of this same ability to work on your designs, but then it leverages the power of 3D rendering, so that if I turn that on, which is actually the default in Colorway, you can see that now we're getting all of the subtle lighting and shadows that would fall across this bag if it was really colorized in this way. And I'm going to zoom into one of these versions over here so that you can see it. Now, I appreciate that that streaming quality sometimes kind of downgrades the visual fidelity, so I'm going to try to zoom in as much as possible on things like this so that you can see it a little bit better. And I'll try as much as possible also to kind of keep from moving the screen around quickly. That way that the streaming can make sure it catches up and you can hopefully catch more of the fine details. So on this view of the backpack, we can see that we definitely have some different materials going on, things that were not visible before when we were looking at the flat two-dimensional representation of it. You can see that this midsection here is ribbed, and it has something going on with a kind of fabric, and that's going to denote something that allows me to know, if I'm using a stretchable material, if I'm using something that has a little bit more flex, or if I'm using something more rigid. I can see the metallic sheen on the zipper and on the zipper pulls. I can see where parts are plastic versus versus mesh versus just any other kind of material. I can see the foam padding, and this allows really this kind of design intent and communication to work on a number of different levels. This allows the designer to more fully explore their own creations. So if I'm the designer and I'm working on this backpack and I have a really good idea for the color choices that I've made, I might want to adjust those slightly when I see how those are going to apply on real materials in real life. So this also means that if I want to design a backpack that I know is always going to be used outdoors, it's always going to be used, this is a trail backpack and something that people are going to take out and go hiking with or something like that, I can actually light it in such a way that I can see how this is going to look out in the forest, out on a trail, out in the desert, and I can see what that's going to look like. Right now, I'm going with just a real standardized kind of photographic studio lighting because it gives us a fairly unbiased view of the backpack. There's no color contribution from the lights or anything like that. But if I know that I'm going to be selling this at a particular retailer, I can light it so that I see how it's going to look at that retailer. So I can make choices that are going to improve my sell-through. I can also, like I said, make it look how it's going to look outside in the desert, in the forest, on the beach, and really get an idea as to what the real design will look like out in the real world. And that gives me as a designer more ability to visualize and to fine-tune my own creative vision. Then when I've got to take this and message this outward for design reviews, for communicating with factories or retailers, this allows me to have more information to give them so that the designer can more fully express that. I'm going to end up using the word a lot, that design intent, because that's really something that becomes difficult to express if you don't have all the tools to express it. And we feel that 3D visualization is one of the ways to really allow that design intent to flow through. It's much easier to look at this backpack in this kind of a view and understand really what it's made of, and really understand the design choices that I've made. So as I pass this on and I go further on with my design, I know that I have the ability to actually get a better visualization, which allows for better visual communication, which means that decisions that we make based off of these choices are more informed. The more informed decisions we have, the less we have the need to go back and forth with factories to get a sample and then have the sample be not quite what my design vision was, but it was the best that they could do based off of the visualization that I gave them. This allows me to give them a more full-featured visualization so that my factories can partner better and give me better results in less time. This allows me to communicate to retailers and even to customers in a way that is much more adaptive and allows us to look at the market in a lot different way. All right, so kind of continuing on here, let's take a little bit more of a tour as to some of the things that are going on, and we'll look at another couple of examples here as well. So you can see here on the left-hand side, I mentioned that this is all of the stuff that's going on with the scene. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click over to a couple of different design iterations. You can see I've got two of them here that are just gray. But with one of the gray ones, I've also set up these materials so that I have some patterns that can go with them. So in this case, I've got two separate patterns that I've created here that are going to go with this. One of them is a leather one. I'm not going to look at the leather here first. Let's go with the swirl one, which gives us kind of a little bit of a camouflagey type of pattern, right? Now the cool thing is I've applied that to the one version that I'd selected here. You can see that it actually exists on all of the other versions. And that's an interesting part about Colorway. And one of the things that makes this a powerful visualization tool is that it understands kind of the three-dimensionality and the whole actual physical roots of this object. Even though these are rendered 2D images, they still have parts of the 3D ingrained into them. And this was modeled in Moto, and a lot of that information that we've created in Moto flows along with it. So for example, if I want to take this pattern that's on here and I want to move it around, you can see as I move it, it moves on all four versions of the backpack at the same time, because all four parts of these are linked together, and it's going to flow around the edges properly. So you can see that this this kind of light gray spot that's here also exists here on this front view. And as I drag it around and get it close to the front zipper pole, oops, went a little too fast, you can see that it's still lining up with the front zipper pole on the front view as well. And if you look real close, it's on the top view, but it's a little hard to view from that angle, which is one of the reasons why it's nice to have multiple views always available at your fingertips. So let's kind of zoom in here a little bit more. And let's say, you know, I like this, but it's a little too large a pattern and I want a little bit more out of that. So I'm going to drag this in and I'm going to make that a smaller pattern, maybe rotate it around to a little bit different angle. Let's go with something like that. And I think that's a little bit more in line with what I had in mind. And you can see I didn't have to change anything. I didn't even have to select a clipping mask. All I had to do is put it on this part and it flows across all of the other views so that this backpack retains that look across all of the different views. Now I like that with that pattern on there. So what I'm going to do is you can see this is this version here of the far left one on the contact sheet that I've got here. So if I go ahead and update this, you'll see that now that updates on my contact sheet. And now I've got that saved as a design iteration and I can continue on. So let's also go down here while I'm here. And I've got this white one here, same thing with the white panel. But in this case, I was actually thinking of making that part leather. So I'm going to go ahead and select the leather and make sure I'm on the right version here. And apparently I'm not. So let's select our leather and I'm going to put it on here. And for some reason I've tinted this. So this is always the fun thing about doing these kind of things live, as because I've inadvertently gone and tinted it blue. So you know, hey, this is what happens. You get the live full view of what's really going on. There we go. So I had leather that was also tinted blue, which is also something else that you can do, which is kind of cool. So here, let's go in now and let's get to our leather, and I'm going to select that. And I can see also I can adjust the scale of the leather and make sure that it's put on a map that it's going to fit properly on. There we go. So now I don't have really heavily blue tinted leather, which is kind of cool though, because it means that you can have a base leather color and you can adjust that and tint it in different ways and see how that's going to look as well. So yeah, we'll say that was intentional and we'll roll with it. So there you go. Now I've got a leather version of this, and since I've got it looking the way that I want it right now, I'm going to go back in over here, go to this design iteration. I'm going to save that. And you can see now this is also updated in my contact sheet and given me a nice leather version of the backpack. All right, so there we go. So that's kind of the basic idea as to what's happening on a visual level in Colorway. And we can see that on here. Let's look at a different example here. I think we're tired of looking at backpacks for the moment. So I'm going to bring a shoe on board. And this is a simpler layout here. I've got a few less things going on because I want to be able to show some other things that are happening with the connected workflows that happen inside of Colorway. So in this case, I've got a simple shoe with two different versions of it. Now, this is a much simpler object than the backpack. The backpack had all of the different parts. You know, I had the ability to recolor each individual zipper and zipper pull, and the zipper stay all could be recolored and, you know, manually tweaked and adjusted. This one has been a little bit more locked down so that I can see a more simplified thing and also see the way that I can work on an item that is a little bit more simplistic in nature. And in this case, we've taken away, just for this example, the ability to change the color of the buckle and the little kind of metallic leather strap that's over the top of the shoe. Figured that those were going to be constants of this design, so we've excluded those from the ability to recolor. So really all that the designer can recolor at this point, the color and material artist, is going to be the parts of the interior, the footbed, and then also the band and the main shell of the upper. So all of those parts here are able to be adjusted. So if I go back and look at a few of the different design versions, you can see that I have those options here to work with. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over to one that's got just kind of a basic color on here, and I'm going to start with this as a basic starting point and actually do a little bit of recoloration work. So as I do this, I want to draw your attention to a couple of different things that are going on here that were not in the previous example. So the first one is that I've got a little section of color chips. So I've got a color table here that is dynamically adapted to the version of the shoe that I'm on. So you can see if I go to a different version, those color chips update. And then also in the bottom left corner here, I know it's going to be pretty hard to read because the text is pretty small. This is designed to be a larger print or on a larger monitor. But you can see that this is a spreadsheet that has all of the information about the individual parts of the shoe. And as I mouse over the different parts of the shoe, you can see that those are highlighted not only on the shoe, but in the spreadsheet as well. I always understand that that spreadsheets are the favorite part of most designers to work with, and every time I show this, I have designers just cry because they realize that they're going to lose out on the favorite part of their day, which is updating spreadsheets. But in spite of that, we thought it would be easier if Colorway did that work for you. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a few changes, and I'm going to kind of call to your attention some of the things that are going on inside of the spreadsheet here as we work. One of the big powers of Colorway not only is its ability to show good visual information, but also remain connected to other workflows. So in this case, this is just set up and connected to a spreadsheet on my desktop, but this spreadsheet could be connected to a PLM system and could be populated with a lot of information that I currently don't have in here. And you'll see some of it on my fictitious PLM that I'm going to pull from in a minute. But it allows me to get information about my design choices that I wouldn't necessarily have right at my fingertips otherwise. All right, so I'm going to take this one and let's make a few different color choices for this. For this one here. In this case, I'm going to go with something a little less simple. I've been working with mostly just kind of flat colors here, but what I'd like to do is work on a bit more of a gradient in this case, and I want to see a couple of different colors going on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to darken up the center here. I'm going to go for a little bit of a gray color, and let me move that into place. And then I'm going to take the white here, and maybe I want to fade out to something a little bit of a different color towards the toe and the heel. So let's go with something a little bit cool, not so bright, towards the toe. And then maybe I want to get a little bit of contrast here. So I'm going to put something warmer and sunnier in the center. So now I've got this pattern of the yellow fading out to the blue, and I'd like to do something to kind of complement that with the strap here. So I'm going to kind of bring back some of the cool colors on the strap, and I do also have, just so you can see, I've got a contact sheet over here that shows my different information that can be on a separate sheet. That way I don't have to have it in my way all the time, but I also have my different versions right there at my fingertips. But I like this, so I'm going to go ahead and down here, I'm going to save a new variation. You can see it's popped up here. It's also popped up over on my contact sheet, and I'm pretty much ready to go, so I can continue making more design choices. All right, so before I go on and continue some other things here, I want to mention that there are some poll questions that we've got up in the broadcast there with just a few short questions. Feel free to go over and answer those as you listen here. And we'd like to hear your thoughts on this format and see how you like it, and also see if there's anything else we can help you out with. So go ahead and hop over if you've got a second and check out the polls as well. All right, so continuing on here, I'm going to go back and let's go again. I'm going to return to this kind of simplified version, which I like here, and I'm going to start just by giving myself kind of a light gray on both of these parts. So let's just kind of put that on both parts. And what I'd like to do here actually is use some materials that I already have in a preset library. So in this case, as I mentioned before, this is just kind of hooked up to a spreadsheet acting as a sort of a dummy PLM that I've got on my desktop. However, any of the information that I have here could be pulling directly from a live PLM, and we can help you integrate with whatever PLM you use. We don't have a specific out-of-the-box solution for that, but we have everything in place to allow you to do that, just because we found that when hooking up to a PLM, everybody kind of has different requirements and different things that they need. So instead of having one out-of-the-box solution that works for just a very small selection of people, we have everything set up and ready to go, so we can help you plug in to whatever solution you're using in any way that you need to use it. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to scroll down through here, and I've got a few different materials, and I'm going to put a couple of them on here. So I'm going to grab this one right here that I kind of like. No, maybe not that one. Nice thing is I can just kind of click through here and see these just at a glance as I go through, and yeah, I think I like that one. So I'm going to leave that one there on the toe. Yeah, no, definitely that one. I'm gonna go with that one there on the toe. Now, obviously, this is a little bit large on the fabricy side. So cool thing is all this stuff is actually going on inside of here. So you can see even all of the different versions that I had clicked on are showing up over here. So I can even go back and see what those look like by showing and hiding different layers. But in this case, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take everything that I didn't want and just delete it. So I'm left with just kind of the main layer here. And now I've got something that that I can take and I can adjust even further here. So if we go in here to this and we select this, I can go in and I can make adjustments like to the scale. So that was a really large zoomed view of that fabric. As I said, this is a dummy PLM. It's not a properly set up one with all of my scaling correctly, but you can see the idea here. So I'm going to scale that down so that looks about right, and I like that. So you know, along with that, I'm also going to go in and just add a little bit of color on the top part. Maybe go something something that's going to pop over the top of that blue. Sure, I'm not the designer, so I won't try to sell you on my color choice skills. I'll just pick some stuff so you can get the idea, and then we'll move on. All right, so let's go and let's say I like that one. So I'm going to go ahead and add that one to my list. You can see that it pops up, and now as I've done that, you can see since this material here is actually drawing from that spreadsheet on my desktop, you can see it's actually populated some information. So I've got not only the part name, which I just have named as shoe. This is something that you can either just draw directly from your Moto files, or you can standardize those as well. But I've got a lot of other information on there. I've got the base color that was underneath it. I've got the composition. This is 100% polyester. I've got the consolidated cost and the cost. Now, this is going to give you relative costing, just something to keep in mind. This isn't going to tell me exactly what it's going to cost to manufacture my shoe if I put all these parts in here, but this is going to give me an idea of relative costing, which is really nice to have because, you know, maybe this material and 4 or 5 of the other materials I choose are all around the same similar price point, but then I make one design where I'm going with something that's a lot more high end. I'm using, I don't know, ostrich leather or something exotic like that that's going to cost a lot more. I'll actually be able to see at a glance as I step through the different variations that one has a higher relative cost. Now, that might be something that takes it out of my consideration as I'm working on design reviews, but it might also mean that, you know, maybe we've got something here that we want to put into a slightly different category that is going to go at a higher price point, and we want to be aware of that. And this is information that, again, you might have offhand knowledge, you might know generally about if you're the designer or if you're the design manager, but this puts it right there at your fingertips and just kind of allows you to have that there without having to worry about it. So this is also giving me things like my texture ID, which is the actual scan of the material. It's giving my vendor and the vendor country, and there's a lot of other things that actually can go into here as well. So you have a lot of the ability to be able to see all of this information, and you can also see just what you want. If you really only want to see the part name and the relative cost, that's all you need to see, and you can just leave those 2 parts in there and call it a deal so that you have that there at a glance. Yeah, so that's it. That's the basic idea of kind of the general nickel tour of Colorway. And so now what I'm going to do is actually build up a project from scratch, because that way I can also show you some of the other features that are in here. So I'm going to hop over here and let's grab a blank document. There we go. And on this one, I'm going to do a little bit of sneaker work here. So I'm going to start off here by taking let's get a shoe here. And I'm just going to take and drag and drop it in. This is a shoe that was modeled inside of Moto. And set up so that I could work on it here inside of Colorway. So I'm going to zoom in on this guy, and I'm going to start doing a little bit of work on this. Okay, so you can see here as I bring this in, everything comes in whited out, in this case with the exception of the airbag, which I have left, just like the buckle on the previous shoe, I've left unchecked so that I can just keep that. I know I've got a constant color for that. I'm not going to worry about changing it on this design. But everything else, as I mouse over, you can see the individual parts all pre-highlight. So I have the ability to take and color up any individual thing right down to the stitches. Okay, so I'm going to start by just tossing some colors on here. Now, one thing that I didn't mention as we were going earlier here is that you have a lot of different ways that you can access color. You can use just kind of a standard color picker. You can use Pantone colors that all come in here with Colorway pre-installed. And then you can also create your own color palettes, which is actually something I'm going to do here. And you can import, edit, and save and export a lot of different file formats for swatches, including the most common one we see is Adobe Swatch Exchange. So in this case, I know I'm going to be using white pretty heavily on some parts, so I'm going to go ahead and just click the plus sign. It's going to add it to my palette over here. You can see right now it has one whopping color, and I know I want to use some red, so let's put red in there. I know I'm going to use black. Maybe I want to use a medium gray. And like I said, this is also something that if you have seasonal or brand-based palettes, you can just import those in ASE files. So let's put in a blue. Of course, I've got to do something in neon green just to make all of the make everybody make your monitors light up here. And then let's go with, let's see, I'm going to put in some Laker colors. So we're going to do purple, and that's not quite a Laker gold, so I won't get myself in trouble. There we go, but a gold color. Okay, we'll call it an unnamed team. All right, cool. So let's now hop over, and I'm gonna jump over to where I have these colors all selected, and I'm just gonna start populating them on the shoe. So let's say I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna make this kind of rubberized strip black, and then let's make this little instep part here red, or the ball of the foot red. Let's make this plastic bit red. Let's see. Oh, we've got a logo on the back, so I'm going to make the logo red. Now you can see as I mouse over parts, I can either just drag and drop, but if I get into really small detailed areas, I can also get a little pop-up menu that will show me everything that I currently have available. In this case, I want to drop this on the logo. So I'm going to put that on the logo. Maybe I'll make this little tag here black. And maybe just for a little bit of pop, I'm going to make the logo on the side. Oops. So what happens when you get ahead of yourself? I'm going to make that logo on the side gold, and then it also exists under here as well. So I'm going to make that gold as well. All right, so I don't have any design variations yet, so I'm going to save those. But before I do that, let's say I've jumped in here, I've gotten all gung-ho, and I've started building this out. But I realize, I want to see other views of this at the same time. So what I'm going to do is grab a couple of different views here as well. So let's see, here's a shot from the heel. And here's a shot from the toe. We'll let those load in. And now you can see I've got two different versions, but of course, since I just dropped these in, these are not colorized. I'm also going to take and shrink these down a little bit. I got a little aggressive on the resolution of my renders. So I'm going to drop those down a little bit because mostly I want to look at the lateral view, but I want to have an idea as to how things are working from other perspectives as well. But since I've done all the color work here, I don't want to have to redo that color work, especially if I'd spent more than 2 or 3 minutes doing it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go up and link these all together. So I can create a new group of linked items. And then what I'm going to do is just grab these other two here, and I'm just going to add those to the group. And as soon as I do it, you can see that those now have the same coloration applied to them. Now, because I've got kind of a reflective metallic material on the logo here, you can see actually that you pick up some of the reflectivity of that more from this different view. So that means that these are now totally linked together, and any changes that I make are going to kind of flow right along for the ride. And let's see, while I'm here, I'm also going to go and grab a little contact sheet and put that up at the top. And we can look at this from any different view we want. Maybe I want to see this more from I'm going to see it from the toe angle. And I might want to resize that, but I'm just going to leave it as is for right now. Now I'm going to go ahead and actually start making some really quick design iterations on this. So I've got this version here, and maybe I want to do a version where I've gotten a little bit less aggressive on the logo. So let's go ahead and put just a gray color on there. And since this is reflective, it's actually going to come out kind of a metallic gray. So that's kind of cool. And let's put this on there as well. And I'm going to save another version of that. You can see now I've got both versions there. And now a cool thing that I can do is, since I have all of these items in here, the items aren't just individual items, but they contain all of the individual pieces of the shoe itself. So as I go over here and open up, I've got little sub parts and things on here. You can see that I have a lot of different parts. And if I know, for example, that I want to do a few different variations of this here, let's say maybe I want to put a little bit more red on this one. So maybe let's put some red on. Let's put red on the stitches. Red stitches are always kind of fun. See if I can get to the stitches. They're pretty small. There we go, stitching. Boop. Now I've got red stitches, and you know what? Let's also put red on the logo on the front. There we go. So I got a few different things going on there. And actually, I want to keep that. So let's go ahead and update this version. But now let's say I want to do a few different versions that I'm just going to swap out the red in this case, just so I can get some things out here and see some different coloration options here. So let's go down, and I'm just going to click on all the parts that are red. You can see I've got a little color swatch on each one of these, so I know what I'm dealing with. And now what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and just make a few different versions here. I'm going to do one where they're blue. So just click blue, and all those parts I've got selected will turn blue. Let's add a variation. Let's do one where they're purple, add a variation. Let's do one, oh, you knew I had to do it. Let's do one where they're bright green and add a variation. And now let's say I want to jump in and do a little bit more work, but I want to base it off of one of these. So let's go back to the purple one here. And this one, I'm actually going to add in a little bit of other colors here. So we can kind of make this one a little bit more colorized than the other versions that I've got. So let's go ahead and put in some things here. You know what? Maybe let's make the heel tab purple. That looks good. My good is relative. You have to understand that. So, so let's go ahead, and I'm going to put this on the tongue as well. And there we go. So yeah, I like that version. Let's go ahead and keep that. And then the other thing that I'm going to do here really quickly is I want to make kind of a more blacked out version. So I'm going to do a stealth version here. So I'm going to just select one of the versions that I've got here, and I'm just going to go in and put black on everything except for the logos. So let's just put black on the panels and the stitching, because we're going to have a little fun with the stitching as well here. So put black on the tongue and the toe and the toe cap. Oh, let's go with black tooling. You can even change the tooling if I want. And then let's go with, oh yeah, let's use our bright green here. This is, yeah, this is going to be brilliant design intent here. Yeah. My apologies to everybody. Always, I gotta offer my apologies as I make these awful color choices. But you know, hey, let's everybody chuckle. You know, you got job security, right? No way I'm coming to take your job. Okay, so let's go in here, and maybe I'm gonna black out the weave that's in the background there, but I'm gonna leave the kind of grid pattern over the top, and let's do the same kind of thing in here. On the weave, and then let's go with like a dark gray on the plastic for the eye stays. There we go. Okay, so cool. We got one more design here that I'm going to take and keep and add. But again, let's say I just got really, excited and I wanted to work on this. And you know, as I started working on it, I saw that the 3D modeler had this started and not quite ready. And I said, oh, I really want that model to work on my color materials. And they say, well, but it's not done yet. It doesn't have laces. I said, well, you know what? Give me where you have it, and I'll work on it. And then when you've got your laces ready, you can send me versions with laces. And then, you know what, by the way, also, as I'm looking at these, can we make the camera angles a little less flat? They seem a little flat. And the 3D artist says, oh, okay, yeah, you can have that. And so I go away here. I'm working on my color choices. And a little time later, the 3D designer comes back and says, yeah, I got your laces done. And I've got some different camera angles or some adjustments to the camera angles for you. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab those, and I'm going to bring these in. So what I'm going to do here is I want to drop these in here, and I'm going to add them as a variant. And you can see now it's popped in. There's actually a little bit higher resolution, closer render too. So you can see now I've got this one here, and it's got laces on it. Now the laces haven't been colored up because I didn't have laces on the previous version. So I have to go and add that if I want, but I can do that as well. So let's see. Let's also take, let's do the same thing for the heel camera, add another variant, and the same thing for the toe. And same thing here, and we'll add another variant. So now all of my different versions, there we go. All of my different versions now have laces on them. So if I want to color up the laces and work on those, I can do that. Yeah, but so this allows me then also to go back and look at, you know, right now I'm looking at a version with and without laces. So I can even step back and forth. Oops, I had unfocused from Colorway. So I can step back and forth, and you can see the difference in the camera angle. This one's a little bit more flat. This one has a little bit more perspective, but then it's got the laces on it as well. So I can see that. I could also do this with basically any other design iteration that I have. If I want to see, hey, what's this going to look like on a basketball court? You know, I want to get the warm wood bounce from the bottom, and I want to get lighting from the top, or maybe I want to see an outdoor court. I want to get blacktop from the bottom underneath and see how that affects the colors of the shoe, and daylight with sunshine coming on it and see how that looks as well. I can have all of those renders and I can bring those in, add them in as variations, and then I've got those to look at, and I can see all of my different versions with that in mind, and I can take those in and I can add those in at any point in the design process. This means that if I'm working on the design, I can get that design, I can start fleshing that out, I can model it myself or have it modeled by somebody who's doing 3D modeling on my team. And as they're working on that, as they get something roughed out, they can give that back to me to make changes on and make adjustments. And this is going to be a lot faster than going back and forth to a factory, because it's something that we can do right there, and we can get immediate results with renders, turntables, anything that we need like that, view 3D models even. And then at the same time, have a third person on the team who's doing color and materials, and they can start jumping on and looking at color and material choices on the roughed out 3D model while I'm still making design iterations and changes and passing back and forth with the 3D modeler. So this allows us to connect ourselves together in a way that would be really difficult to do otherwise. If I had initially come out with this design and done some sketches, got it fleshed out as much as I felt possible, and then sent that over to my factory, and then had to turn around and wait, how long is it going to take me to get that back from the factory? I've got to wait for it to be created. They've got to take my my Illustrator drawings or my sketches, and they've got to turn that into not just a 2D design, but turn it into actually something that's 3D. And then they're going to make design choices because they have to be able to turn my sketches or my Illustrator drawings into something that's actually manufacturable. The more I have something related to an actual 3D object, the easier chance I have, or the better chance I have of getting that design faithfully followed through at the factory. But at the same time, my color material artist can be making color material choices based on something that is actually going to give them realistic feedback, instead of just making their color choices based off of my Illustrator drawings while we're waiting for the sample to come back from the factory. This allows us to connect and pull things together in ways that really wouldn't be possible. All right, so I'm actually going to hop over and take a little look at Moto as well, so that we can see kind of some of the back end, the little bit more technical stuff. I'm going to try and not get too technical, but show some of the same stuff that we've got working here. And then I want to make sure I leave a little bit of time at the end for questions. All right, so let's hop over into Moto. And I'll start with just a really quick Moto and then look at questions. And then if we have more time at the end, or if any of the questions address it, we can look at those questions in Moto. All right, so I've got Moto up here, and let's hope that switching it to a different monitor doesn't mess anything up. Okay, looks like we're still all right. Okay, cool. So now I'm over in Moto. Now, the reason that I'm not going to give the nickel tour of Moto is you can see just at a really quick glance that there's a lot more going on in here than there was in Colorway. This isn't simple canvas with some tool palettes and my items in my scene. There's a lot more to it, and that's because Moto is a full-featured 3D animation package. You can use it to build shoes, or you can use it to build creatures for visual effects, models for video games, pretty much anything that you want. You have the ability to do here. Now, the downside of that means that there's a lot to look at, and the upside of that means that you only need to focus on what you need to do your specific task. In modeling this shoe, I didn't even touch, a vast majority of the tools that are inside of Moto, but they're all there and they're waiting when we need to do other parts. Do I want to turn this into a real-time asset that can be viewed online, that can be put into an augmented or virtual reality scene? I've got the tools to do that. Do I want to hand this off and do animated marketing visualization with it? I've got all the tools here to do that. So you're creating something that really can live in multiple areas. And since Moto has all of the features there kind of waiting for you, I know that I've got those possibilities later on. All right, so let's have a quick look here. And like I said, not going to give the kind of tour of the interface or anything like that. I just want to kind of give you a quick idea as to the things that are going on in here. So I've got this version of my scene here. And what I've got, the one part I am going to give a tour of, actually two parts, is up here is my render, or my preview of my render. And this is going to allow me to see how this shoe looks with real lighting. So a lot of times when we're looking at something for a real-time visualization, the lighting is not as realistic. It doesn't have the ability to have the fidelity that we would get from something like, we call this an offline render. It doesn't happen instantly like in a video game, but you can get all of the material attributes. The difference between leather and fabric and all those kind of things is going to be more faithfully portrayed here, because because those attributes are actually funneling right into the render. So also, so let's go ahead and I can start looking here. Oops, let's take and turn that off so that I can actually look around in here. And I got to give it a second here to cache. Okay, there we go. So now I've got this shoe here. And you can see as I initially kind of mouse around, it's a little grainy and kind of low fidelity, but that's okay because it will clear up as soon as I stop navigating. So let's start navigating here, and you can see as I've pulled in to get a closer look at this part of the shoe, it's out of focus. Hopefully that comes through on the broadcast. But since this is actually based off of fairly realistic cameras, I can actually change and adjust my focus. This works a lot like kind of tap to focus does on your phone camera, but I can change focus and I can look at any individual part of this, and Moto's camera is going to know that that's what I'm focusing on, and it's going to adjust it. So now this part here on the eye stay is in focus, trails off towards the heel. Focus also trails off towards the front of the scene. Now, the cool thing about this is it means that, just on this simple level, if I'm working on this in Colorway and I decide, I really need a closer up, we want to see more detail on, the eye stay. Let's zoom in on the eye stay. I want to see how the plastic and the leather interact here and how the stitching works. I can actually zoom in there and focus in on those. Now, my actual the depth of field and the focus is turned off in Colorway by default to allow you to see kind of a more all in focus view, but you can also go back and turn it on in Colorway if you want, which is pretty fun as well. So the other cool thing about this is means not only can I change and move around, I can change and edit my model. I can prepare other things from that, but I can also look and see how this is going to look, like I had mentioned before, in different lighting scenarios. So in this case, I'm lit by, if I'm not incorrect, a basic kind of a warehouse photographic studio. So it's a large photo studio. If you look really closely, you can see reflected little bits of kind of brick walls and things. It's and it's lit by some large, photographic studio lights. But maybe that's not how I want to see this. Maybe I want to see how this is going to look at the park. So I'm going to go here and go grab my grassy park that I've created. And this will take a second for it to load in. And then once it's loaded, we'll actually be able to edit it and move around a little bit better in real time. But this is going to load in the lighting based off of that lighting scenario. So there we go. It's starting to come in now. And we'll give it a second. Once it gets it cached, it will render significantly quicker. And this is going to allow me to see how this is going to look from different lighting environments. I can see how it's going to look outside. I can see how it's going to look at the park. I can see how it's going to look at the gym. I can see how it's going to look in the mall. And I can get all of those versions right here. Oh, there we go. And once it clicked in pretty quick. So you can see now here when I'm outdoors, this white really kind of lights up. It's much brighter. So I know that as I work on this, oops, let's focus here. I know that as I work on this, that if this is kind of where this shoe is going to live, what do I need to do with the white? Do I want the white to be that bright? Now, also, I can see here that there's a difference between the leather and the plastic that's a lot more substantial in this kind of a lighting scenario. So do I want to make some tweaks and some slight adjustments to my material choices based off of that? Do I want to kind of take the white on the plastic and pull back the color just a little bit so that it doesn't jump quite as much if I'm outside? So this allows you to get kind of even more full-featured visualization of the things that are going on. Whereas, if I'm going to look at this in another environment, say the mall, got the mall here somewhere. If I can spell, there we go. M comes before P, right? All right, so let's go ahead and drop this into the mall and we can see what it looks like in the mall. So, this kind of gives you a good quick idea as to the rendering capabilities inside of Moto. And also, like I said, there's a lot more in here. This is where everything is created. So you can do all of your modeling, you can do your rendering, materials, animation, everything can flow right through here. So while that's catching up, and since we're getting kind of close to the end here, I'm going to take a hop over and look. I see there's a few questions that have popped up. So let me go over and see if I can answer some of the questions. All right. So first question, I'm kind of try to answer these in the order that they came in. Is it necessary to unwrap UVs prior to entering colorway? So no, but it's probably preferable. So UVs are can be used inside of Colorway. Colorway can also do basic cubic or spherical projection if you just want to get something really quick, or if you're just working on colors and not so much materials where you're going to have an actual texture to show the material. You don't have to have the UVs. Now, a big part of what we've been doing with some of our more recent work in footwear creation, especially, but this is also trailed out into pretty much anything else that we've done that's manufacturable, especially things that have flat patterns, is that as we're creating these things, we want to create them in such a way that the UVs are can be done automatically, so that the UVs pop in, that we know they're going to match up. They're going to be based on how they're going to fit to either a last or to a more advanced last, if we want to do a more foot-shaped last, so we can get a more relaxed look or something like that. Our UVs are going to be based off of that, so those are actually going to come in automatically. I actually didn't do any manual UVs on this shoe, but all the UVs are there. I could go take and place graphics either in Moto or in Colorway without having to worry about the UVs. So good question. Thank you. So the next one says, does an assigned depth of field for Moto present in Colorway? So like I said, I didn't look at these, but I was kind of inadvertently answering these, so that's good. But just to follow up on that, so the depth of field that you actually assign in Moto does not translate into Colorway directly. It actually pulls off the depth of field in the rendering process for Colorway. But what it does do is it allows you to have an adaptive depth of field inside of Colorway. And I'll hop over and show that here in just a moment. And let me get to the one other question that's up there at the moment, and then I'll hop over and actually show that in Colorway. So it says CPU or GPU render. This current iteration is a CPU based render. We do have a path tracer that's also being worked on. It is in the current version of Moto that does have some GPU acceleration as far as light caching. Not light caching. The light calculation. I'm not an engineer, sorry, but there is some GPU acceleration on it. It is not a pure GPU renderer. That isn't something that's currently inside of Moto. However, Moto does have plugins for Octane, V-Ray, a number of other renders, so you could plug in a GPU based render. The one thing is that the Colorway rendering system is linked very closely into at present into the Moto render, the way that it's drawing out the necessary passes to be able to create an object that can be edited and still have all of its three-dimensionality in 2D space. However, that is going to be tied into the Moto render. So if you do come in and render with a GPU based render, that won't be what's used when you pass into Colorway at present. Okay, so obviously feel free to answer or ask other questions as we go here, but I'm going to go over and let's hop back to our shoe here. And I'm going to go to this version here where we're looking at the toe of the shoe, because I think this is a good one to visualize on. So I'm going to grab this shoe here, and I want to go in and actually change that depth of field. And actually, I can do a lot of other cool things in here. This is one of the parts I don't get asked about enough in Colorway, and it's really one of my favorites. Coming from a 3D background, I like working with this kind of stuff. So yeah, I find it cool. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to zoom in, and let's go ahead and add in. I've got a number of different post effects that I can add in here. I can add in noise and bloom. I can do color correction on here, and this is actually going to integrate into the render itself, so that if I do this on one version of a file, it will propagate onto other versions, not only other colorways that I have inside of this scene, but if I've shared this item and somebody else has it into separate colorway scenes, if they update their colorway render, it will actually have this stuff with it. So I'm going to put a quick defocus on here, and let's just go ahead and change. I see I can adjust my focal distance. I can adjust the strength. And now this is a post-process depth of field, so it is going to lack some of the realism. Now I actually have my background clipped. I'll unclip the background once we get out of here, so that we don't get this fringing happening. But let's go ahead and I can make adjustments here to this just to kind of dial this in. Let's say I want to focus kind of in on the toe there. And I can pull this to maybe right there. Let's make it subtle, so it just kind of trails off the back end of the shoe. And, you know, and like I said, I also have some other things that I can do in here. I can add on a little bit of film grain, a lot of other kind of cool things, but I'll just keep it simple for right now. But let's go ahead and I'm going to close this out, and it asks if I want to save it. I'm going to say yes. And now you can see this actually has that in there. Now, I also have this laid onto a white background, so you can see we don't have the fringing. But if I did have a more colored background, I could load that in. You can see right now all that does is it kind of blocks out the the heel version of the shoe. I could also send this to the back of the stack, but I had purposefully rendered this on a white background for that reason, knowing that my layout here was going to be on white. So I can just leave that off, and you can see that we don't get the fringing now here at the back end, but we do see that that depth of field has translated into here. And if I go to a different version of this, I can go to a different color choice, and you can see that I still have the depth of field taken into account there. So that's going to happen on all of these different versions, even my crazy purple and gold version. So there we go. Let's see. Oh, another question popped up here. Let's see. It says, is Colorway connected to a material library like that of the Material Exchange? So the material library that you're plugging into really can draw from anywhere. As I mentioned, mine is just based off of essentially a spreadsheet with linked scans of some really basic materials. You can see there my materials are pretty simple, just to give you give you an idea. But you can bring in any kind of PLM and any kind of material library that you have. It takes a little bit of integration to get that up and running, but basically it's just telling and helping Colorway to point at and look at the materials that you do have. So if you have something, if you have scans, I'm not 100% sure. I would have to follow up on what Material Exchange has as far as the actual assets that are integrated. But if, say, you do have assets that are linked to real physical material samples and then scans of those materials, those can be linked into here. So I know there are a number of different services and offerings that do things like that. The other option, you actually have 3 different options for that, is going with ones that are pre-created like that from a vendor. You can also scan and create your own materials based off of, again, physical swatches. You could either use something pretty high end like a Tax 7, or you could use a Visu scanner, or you can use what I've got sitting on my desk right next to me, which is a photographic light box with a few extra lights set up so that I can photograph and extract a lot of other detail information out of my materials to be able to create them from scratch. So that's the second one. You can build them based off of your own photos. Actually, you can even snap iPhone photos and they will work. It's not going to be ideal, but you can link them in the same way if you want to see something quickly in Colorway. And then the last way would be to create the materials digitally. Now, that is going to require a little bit of an extra lift, and that can be either done in something like Moto natively. Moto has a bunch of tools for material creation, either based off of photographs or based off of kind of mathematic procedural creation, or you could use something like a Substance Designer or Substance Painter to be able to create those. And then the same kind of thing, you'll have image maps that will be created, and those image maps would flow into Colorway just like anything else at that point. So you have a lot of different options for getting materials in, and really it's going to depend on the workflow that you have and the needs that you have, and what you actually have to use and to show for your design work. So hopefully that answers the questions. If anybody has any other questions, I don't see anything else popping in there. But I'll keep from being overly long-winded, and if there aren't any more questions, I'll kind of wrap it here. That was Colorway and Modo. I'm glad you could spend a little time here joining me for lunch, or I guess lunch if you're on the East Coast, brunch if you're on the West Coast, and something in the middle if you're somewhere in between. But I'm thankful that you could be here and join me for this time, so that we're spending a little bit of time digitally face-to-face talking about something that I really like to do, and hopefully this sparks some interest in anybody. If you'd like to further discuss this, by all means, reach out and we'd be happy to talk to you more about it. We're excited about this work that we're doing, and we're happy to share it with you. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you next time.